This episode is sponsored by Audible. Get a free audiobook of your choice that you get to keep with their free trial. You can learn more at lutherancartographer.com/audible. The Lutheran Cartographer, Episode 71. Welcome to the Lutheran Cartographer, the podcast where we explore what it's like to be Lutheran in different places. I'm your host, Nicholas Weber. Today we are going to Cullman, Alabama, to St. Paul's Lutheran Church to talk to Pastor John Bussman. He is the senior pastor there. Pastor Bussman, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. Great to be here with you this morning.
Help orient us geographically. We're in Alabama. Where's Cullman?
Cullman is in the north central part of the state. We are about 45 minutes north of Birmingham and about 45 minutes south of Huntsville. We are right on Interstate 65. So Interstate 65 basically runs from north to south right through the middle of the state. So about as north central as you can get, that's where we are.
Okay, good deal. Tell us a little bit more about yourself, where you're from, and how you came to your parish.
Sure. I'm actually from here in Cullman. I grew up here. I did not necessarily grow up Lutheran, but I did grow up in this community. So I'm at home here, in other words. But leaving after college to do what I thought I wanted to do, which was medicine, didn't really work out. I wasn't very happy. So I wound up transferring out to Concordia Seward, where I entered the pre-seminary program, and then of course went to Concordia Seminary in St. Louis, and then call day happened, and here I am. So I've been here since for 9 years at this point. I have a wife. We've been married. Just celebrated our anniversary a couple days ago. We've been married for 8 years, and we have 2 boys. One is about to turn 7 next week. The other one just turned 5. So that's our life right now. I'm coaching a coach pitch team and a t-ball team. So that's what's happening in my life for the next 8 weeks.
Fantastic. Tell us a little bit more about how you came to Lutheranism. How did you end up transferring into the seminary program?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question and a long story. But I was baptized Lutheran as an infant, and due to other circumstances, I wound up growing up in the Baptist church. So all of my formation, all of the Bible stories that you come to know as children, I learned in the Baptist church. And it wasn't until just before 8th grade that my family decided to go back to the Lutheran church. And, really from a very early age, I don't know that I necessarily appreciated it as much as I appreciate it now. I knew something was obviously different, but I had always learned the stories of the Bible as all of these disconnected pieces. And that led to a ton of questions. I didn't know what order to put the pieces in or anything like this, but there were always questions. And coming to the Lutheran church, having a pastor who was really an excellent teacher at that point, be able to say, these are not little isolated incidences that happened really a long time ago and have no connection to us. They actually all come together and all point to Jesus. It was mind-blowing to me. So there was always an interest for me in teaching the scriptures and learning the scriptures, but to become a pastor was not something that was really in my mind at that point. I really had an affinity toward chemistry and medicine, so that's what I took off to do. But it was really unfulfilling for me, and I'm glad it's fulfilling for other people, but it was not for me. And I wound up at that point in the middle of January transferring out to Seward, Nebraska, which was beyond a culture shock and a weather shock and all of this. But that's how, very, very briefly, how everything went down.
I see. Let's talk a little bit more about Cullman. Tell us about what the good things are about the area.
Cullman is a small town. I know depending on where you are in the country, the definition of small changes. The town is about 14,000 people, but it is a fantastic place for families. There's so much to do for families here. But so from my perspective, it's small enough of a town, but it's also big enough to have access to things that you need access to. We are within 4.5, depending on where you go, 4.5 to 6 hours from the Gulf Coast, from the beaches. We are a matter of 2 hours from, really the foothills of the Smoky Mountains. So we have access to whatever people want access to. We're just not very far off from those things. We have a community college here, really good education system. So, people who want to go to college aren't necessarily, have to pack their bags and go very far off. It's a 2-year college, but they can go and get a very, very good degree there, or at least get basics out of the way before they do transfer someplace else. But it's a very, and I know this is so cliche, I'm sure, but it really is a unique place. It is, I know there's a ton going on in the world, but it is still relatively safe. I mean, I still hear of people who don't lock their cars or don't lock their houses or things like this. We send the kids out in the neighborhoods. So that's a very kind of old school way of living, but there's still a lot of that goes on here. So it's unique in that way. But as far as raising families and all of that, and we have a school here at the church too. So to be able to go to the ballpark or do this or do that and see all of these kids that go to school here or elsewhere and just really begin to build those relationships, that's a huge thing. And so when I say, small enough but big enough, we kind of fit right there in between where, I mean, that's the driver behind this community, I firmly believe.
Excellent. Let's talk about the other side of that. What are some of the challenges about being there?
It's kind of the flip side of what I've just said. It's small, right? When I say it's small enough, but it's big enough, if you're used to living in a larger place, you do have to drive to get there. So I say, it's a good thing that we're only 45 minutes from Huntsville, only 45 minutes from Birmingham, only 4 hours from the beach. But the flip side of that, it can be a negative. You are 45 minutes from Birmingham. If you want the big science museum, you've got to drive to get there. If you want, the I don't know, football games and all of this, you've got to drive to get there. So that may be something that turns people away from a community like this. It just depends on what people prefer, but it's certainly not big city living here. It is smaller. So that could be a challenge for people, especially in the days of a pandemic when people just want to get out and go someplace else other than their small community.
Yeah.
So I would say that, again, from my perspective, that's probably one of the most challenging things about Cullman.
Okay. Let's go back briefly to the cultural question. You mentioned how much of a culture shock it was to go from where you were to Seward, Nebraska, and then I'd imagine there was some contrast between Seward and where you went to seminary. Talk a little bit about how you'd help us begin to understand those differences or how you experienced them.
The culture shock of Nebraska was that I thought I was from a small town, right? That's what you hear growing up constantly. Oh, this is a small town. There's nothing to do. We don't have anything to do. I can't wait to get out of the town. And then I went to Seward, And again, you know, nothing, no shots at Seward here. I had an excellent time in Seward, but to transfer out in January, to not be, to have this gradual introduction to the weather. I went there and I think it snowed like 36 inches, basically an inch an hour the week after I got there. And here I was from North Alabama, and everything shuts down for snow flurries, or even the threat of snow flurries, everything shuts down. It's like, wait, we still have to go to class in this? Are you kidding me? But to see a small Midwestern town. I was used to all the farms. I grew up, raising Black Angus cattle and all of this. So I was used to all of that. But to see a town that was even smaller, that was really driven on the basis of that university, was a little bit of a shock to be reliant on that 45-minute drive if you really wanted anything beyond Walmart. That was much different for me. But again, I had an excellent time. It was exactly what I needed at that point to keep focused and oriented on the task at hand. But again, the flip side of that was St. Louis, a larger place where you have everything you would want to get into and more, and a lot of things you shouldn't get into. Cullman is much more like where I spent my vicarage. I spent my vicarage in Tullahoma, Tennessee. And Tullahoma's kind of a smaller town, about the same population. And it's in really, southern Tennessee, about 5 miles north of Lynchburg, where Jack Daniels is. So, more of what I was used to, there. But I was able to, come back here, especially. And when I would hear people talk about, oh, there's nothing to do, there's nothing to do, there's nothing to do. It's like, actually, let's open our eyes and look at all of these opportunities that we do have in our community. And there's always something going on here, always.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit more about the cultural aspect. You've mentioned the differences in terms of the size of the place and going to Seward and just it being so much smaller than even Cullman and the differences there. Did you notice a difference in terms of what people valued and how they interacted going from kind of the Southeast Alabama to the Midwest?
I was not used to being around that many Lutherans. I was not used to seeing a hospital have a name, Lutheran Hospital, or anything like this. I mean, we are in Baptist country down here. So to see people in the grocery store or out and about who, the majority of them were Lutheran and, talking the same way, believing the same thing, that was extremely, to the point where it was almost odd, like Twilight Zone. He's like, wait, everybody's Lutheran here? What is this? And, when we got there, these are the churches within a 5-mile radius, and there were either like 9 or 14 of them. And I'm thinking, are you serious? There are 6,000 people here. Why are there 14 Lutheran churches in a 5-mile radius? But that was strange to me. I mean, it was nice. It was great, but I was not at all used to that. I was used to being the only Lutheran in the room, where people, basically thought we worshipped Martin Luther King Jr. and having to explain the whole deal. So as far as culturally, from that perspective, that was one of the major shocks to me. And realizing that just wasn't Seward because there was a college there. That's like kind of the Midwest thing. So that was interesting.
Certainly. Let's talk a little bit more about the Baptist kind of stronghold of the Southeast and what it's like to be Lutheran there in Cullman. Is that part of the Bible Belt? What's it like being Lutheran there?
We're absolutely part of the Bible Belt, but it's shocking to me to be part of the Bible Belt, what's called the Bible Belt, and how few people know of Jesus.
Huh.
They'll know a story here or there, but they don't know about Jesus. So it is, the closest Lutheran church to us is 9 miles away, and they are a faithful congregation. But outside of that, you've got to drive 30 miles for the next one. And so we are few in number here. So from that perspective, it's difficult to be a Lutheran. Not because anybody's antagonistic towards it, but it's not Seward, where everybody's Lutheran and everybody knows. You feel like you're always talking about the very basics of who you are, what you are, that we're not a cult, things like this. But that's also such a fun thing, because it's not like, oh, you're Baptist and there's this stereotype that falls over people's faces about what a Baptist is. We do have that opportunity to explain, especially with our school, as we teach every morning, and we encounter our parents to help them see what it means to be a Lutheran, and to do for people what was done for me as a child, where we take all of these Bible stories, say, actually, there is a common thread, and actually it is all about Jesus. We've been talking about baptism in our morning assembly for the school, and they all know the story of the flood, but we were able to take the flood and talk about baptism and begin to make some of those connections. So, because that's the way I grew up. I know that those connections have not been made. So to begin to teach this way, and to see light bulbs go off for people, the light bulbs going off for people will never grow old as we teach the scripture. So to be able to face our community in that way, and not kind of isolate ourselves on our little corner here, and not to go out and steal everybody from their churches, but to give them that different perspective. Say, look, all of this does go together. It all points to Jesus, so that they can know about their Lord. That's a fun thing. I teach also as an adjunct at our community college in our community, and they have me teaching a survey of the Old Testament, survey of the New Testament, and a biblical interpretation. So to be able to do this for college age students and others, it's a lot of fun, but it also keeps me kind of connected with the community to see, okay, what are these brand new college students learning theologically from their churches? Because there is the movement where this growing kind of non-denominational movement, even within our town. So to kind of hear their backgrounds and hear their perspectives, and be able to talk to them, and not necessarily convert them at the community college, but to help them to think more deeply about those things. It's always, that's what I enjoy about engaging these people.
I see. So it sounds like there's really an openness to Christianity and to kind of Christian ideas and ethos, but perhaps not as deep an understanding as you'd like to see in the community. Is that a just way of summarizing it, or how would you?
That's fair.
Okay.
That's fair. It is, and I hate to say it this way, because it may sound mean, and I don't mean it that way at all. The level of biblical literacy around us is almost Sunday school like. Again, I know the stories. I know about Noah's Ark. I know who Abraham is, but that's about all. Joseph, wasn't that the guy with the coat of many colors? So the level of biblical literacy here is certainly not where I would like it. And when I say here, I mean the community, not necessarily the congregation. It is certainly not where it needs to be. It's very, as long as I believe in Jesus, everything's going to be okay, which leads you to the next question. Well, who is Jesus? Because that's kind of an important question. So, and I don't mean that harshly. There's a lack of education going on here. The preaching is much like it is in other places. It's become very self-centered, very, point by point driven on how you can have a better life and doing this and doing that, which is it's good, it's fine, but it's really not for the pulpit on Sunday morning. So again, that just gives us another opportunity for a conversation, and it leads people who visit the church to say, man, y'all really read the Bible a lot. You really talk about Jesus a lot. It's like, well, yeah, this is kind of the point of, from our perspective, the point of preaching, to get you to Jesus and to remind you what he has done for you in the forgiveness of sins.
Absolutely. Let's take a moment for a word from our sponsor. Folks, if you like podcasts, you will enjoy Audible. It's a service that gives you an audiobook to listen to each month of your choice from a large library. And they want to get you started with a free trial offer that includes an audiobook that you get to keep. So go to lutherancartographer.com/audible to get your free audiobook and start your free trial today. If you're not sure what book to check out, I recommend taking a look at Pastor Jonathan Fisk's Broken: 7 Christian Rules That Every Christian Should Break as Often as Possible. This was recently released on Audible. I'm very excited about it. In the book, Pastor Fisk goes through the classic pitfalls of moralism, mysticism, and rationalism, as well as several others. Check it out at lutherancartographer.com/audible. Let's get back to our guest. Let's talk now about what it's like to raise a family there. You mentioned your 2 boys. What's it like in terms of the family atmosphere of the town?
It's a very, very, very tight-knit community for the most part. I've talked about, leaving doors unlocked and everything. The neighborhoods are still full of kids, on Halloween, for instance. They're all just running around. There are golf carts everywhere. And so it's, families are very, very trusting of each other. Neighbors know each other. We have, these neighborhoods that we've got a terrible housing shortage here for the growth of our community. But these neighborhoods that pop up and houses that are being built, the people within those communities really, they know each other. Kids will run out their front door and run down the street and play with the kids down the street, and parents won't think twice about it. And people may listen to this and think, how naive, that's the silliest thing I've ever heard, but that's the reality of our community. You go to the parks and parents can sit on the bench and the kids just go off and play with one another. They get to know each other, and I wouldn't think anything like that were strange if I had not been anywhere else and seen that that's not the way, that is folly for a lot of communities. Like you're sending your child out on a death sentence to send them out of your house to run down the street 4 houses down, But when we have different groups who come to Cullman and look at Cullman and all of that, that's one of the things that they notice right away is how family oriented Cullman is. I think several years ago we were voted the best place in Alabama to raise a family, for schools, for parks, for everything like this. And there are a ton of young people in our community. So it's a good thing for the boys to be able to, I know my older son likes for my younger son to have other friends besides him, so he leaves him alone every now and then. So that's it's I don't know. I know I'm probably talking for your listeners in cliches, but but it's real here. It's real, and I'm not necessarily talking it up for the sake of, so the people in town will be proud of the way I talked about Cullman, but it's true. It's the reality here.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's still a lot of places like that, although it seems sadly it's diminishing over the years. But that's really good to hear that's still a reality, as you just mentioned in Coleman. What are the educational options? You've got the school at your church. What other options are there?
Right. We do have our school. Our school currently is pre-K 3 through 6th grade, and with opportunities in the future. The school's been here for, well, when the church was established in 1885, a school went along with that. There were several years that we went without a school, but we reestablished the school in 1954 and have had it ever since. It's been a staple in our community. And then basically after that, there are another couple private schools, but our city schools are very, very good. So we're not competing with our city schools necessarily. I know you get into some places and it's like, well, yeah, the private schools they're trying to beat down the doors to get in there because they want to avoid the public system on the basis of education or safety or whatever. We do have good public schools here. Now, our children are leaving at the top of that and helping those numbers go up, certainly. But the city schools they're getting a good education there. Their sports programs for kids who are into sports are top in the state. Music programs always receive high marks. So I don't really necessarily have anything negative to say about any of the school systems that are here. It's much more of a working together rather than a competing against. And I think sometimes that's hard. Sometimes that's a hard way to look at things, especially when you're wanting to fill your school because you'd like for students to be here so that you can proclaim the word to them. And that's why I really want people here, is not so much on the basis of, well, I've heard well, that's going to sound bad if I say I don't want them here on the basis of education. I do, because we provide a great education, but more so from a pastoral perspective, I want them here so that we can proclaim Christ to them.
Absolutely, yeah. The education part is great, but the key is the care of souls, right?
Right.
Okay.
Right. Absolutely.
That makes sense. Okay, let's go on and talk about the good things to do and see in town. If you had a friend coming into town, what restaurants or activities would you recommend to them?
Sure. Yeah. Well, this is great. I like to have old professors, friends, whoever come to town, and we like to show it off. And for anybody who would say that there's nothing to do in Cullman would be absolutely fooling themselves. We have a man-made lake that it's as close as 15 minutes away, or certain parts of the lake are as far as an hour and 15 minutes away. It's windy roads and a large lake. There are all kinds of things you can get into there. Sea-doos and boats, fishing. The Major League Fishing actually does tournaments out there. So the lake is a huge growing community for us. Plenty of great golf courses. We have they're building right now an RV park. We have an ATV track, big park where people can go out and do that. Throughout the year, we have different festivals. We are big for strawberries here, so we have a strawberry festival actually coming up in a couple of weeks. We have an Oktoberfest. We're a German community, so the Oktoberfest happens every year. Very recently, and this is kind of strange to some of your listeners too, we were a dry county. If people don't know what a dry county is, that means there's no sale of alcohol whatsoever in our community. And we were that way until very, very recently. And as soon as we quote unquote went wet, several men in our community, one of our members included, started a brewery. So we have a brewery called Goat Island Brewing, and they have live music throughout the week. That's an excellent place to go. I always like taking people to Goat Island for a tour, and to show that off and to be proud that one of our Lutheran members is an owner there to show that off. We have the fair, Cullman County Fair here in town every fall. Um, there is a small museum that we have that talks about the history of this town, how the Germans got here, and when what happened next. So that's a good opportunity for people to know more about the community. One of the things that I like best about here and downtown is everything is really walkable. We have an old downtown, a warehouse district, and then we have the new downtown. And our old downtown has really been revitalized over the last several years, over the last 10 years. 10 years ago, we're coming up 5 days away, coming up on the 10th anniversary of a major tornado that ripped right through our downtown. And after that tornado, it really showed the resiliency of our community. Everybody came together. And whereas some people would have liked to have just seen old downtown be bulldozed and start over, they rebuilt it just as it was, and really brought a lot of life into that old downtown area. So much so that our Chamber of Commerce, starting in the summer and going through the fall, does an event called Second Fridays, and they block off all the streets. Even a section of a major highway. The police will be out there to direct traffic and let people cross the streets. There are restaurants down there. They'll have all fun activities for the kids, car shows, boat shows, but it's just another opportunity for the community to come together. And a couple thousand people will show up from all over the place just to come to Second Fridays to listen to live music and all of that. In that same area, we have Christmas parades and all of that brings people together. One of the major things that has happened over the last decade is a pretty large concert, a 2-day concert. It's called Rock the South, and this grabs about 40,000 people, 40 to 60,000 people over the span of a couple of days. Country music, rock music. They just released the lineup for this one coming up, and I don't remember. I should. If my wife were here, she'd give you the list from top to bottom, but I don't remember. Luke Combs, I think. I don't remember who all, but it's a really, really big deal, and people come from. The last time we had people from all 50 states come to Cullman for this show, so that's a big thing. As far as food is concerned, I know people like food. Several great barbecue joints, Southern barbecue here. Johnny's Barbecue is one of those. We have one restaurant that's been well known by people in the South for a long time. It's called the All Steak. They're famous for their orange rolls. But one of the newer restaurants that I have to give a shout out to that has become one of my personal favorites is called the 412 Public House. It's a very, very small restaurant, good seafood, great steaks, good bartenders. We had a group in town about a month ago, and I made sure they could get into 412 for dinner. It's fantastic, great food. Also up in Huntsville, we have a NASA Space and Rocket Center. Warner von Braun really brought that into Huntsville. The Saturns and the Apollos were all really stationed there and engineered there, really. But it's interesting. We had a minor league baseball team that recently moved to town. They're about to start their first season, and they are called the Rocket City for Huntsville, the Rocket City Trash Pandas. And most of the listeners out there probably don't know what a trash panda is. That's Southern slang for a raccoon, trash panda. So their logo is this raccoon in a trash can that's taking off like a rocket. So I'm going to have to take some people up there to a Rocket City Trash Pandas game. So that's a lot, right? I mean, there's just a ton of stuff to do in our small community. There's always something to get into, and the vast majority of it is meant to be done, in community with one another.
Great. Yeah, that's a lot of good things to check out. Listener, you can see links to all those things at lutherancartographer.com/71, the show notes for that page, and I encourage you to check that out. Let's go ahead and talk about current events. What's the Alabama's response been like to the coronavirus?
Alabama's approach was different depending on where you are. I would say a lot of the places were quote unquote shut down, but not shut down. And people reacted much differently. As far as the church was concerned, we did everything that, well, I shouldn't say that. We tried to stay open and not tick off the law enforcement. Of course, very early on, we really did not know what this was, and we tried to stay open. We actually, within 72 hours of the lockdown, the shutdown, we have a member of our congregation who builds cabinets for a living, and I got with him and we built an altar. Looks like the one inside. And he built this thing. He took his time over. I mean, it may have been 2.5 days, and built this whole thing and brought it to the church so we could worship outside. And we did that for a week, and then the full lockdown came, and we were out for 6 weeks, 7 weeks, and as soon as the order was lifted, we were back. It was the Sunday after Mother's Day last year, and we've been at it ever since. We kind of held off on Sunday school for the summer, but really once August hit, we've been as back to normal as you can be. Of course, we bought a few hand sanitizing stations, but we really didn't change anything. And again, that can cause some divisiveness within the church, because you have some on the one hand who say we never should have shut down, yet on the other hand, we're not doing enough. So to be able, but that was one of the reasons I wanted to get back to normal as much as possible, because the church needed to be the constant in this. The church needed to be the place people could come and have rest for their souls in the midst of fear and unknown and all of this. Our school was up and running. We have not faced a shutdown of our school at all. We have not had to do virtual anything. So we took everything into consideration. But again, we were able to be a staple in our community, a constant. It's not that we're COVID deniers or anything like this, but there were ways that we could do what we needed to do to proclaim the gospel in the midst of it, and be that sure foundation for our people. And it's going to be interesting how the world looks at this last year, say in 50 years, but that's kind of how we approached it. And I'm extremely thankful for my elders and my church council and the members of the church for trusting in this whole thing and getting back to normal as soon as we did.
Yeah, that's really good. As we start to close out the podcast, Pastor Bussman, I want to make sure to give you the opportunity to point our listeners where you'd like. Your church's website, places to follow you online. Where would you like to point our listeners?
Sure. So our church website is St. Paul's L, right? stpaulsl.com. You can find everything that you need to there, and other links for instance, to our church YouTube page. If you just go straight to YouTube, you can find us on YouTube. St. Paul's Cullman is the link there. You can find me personally on YouTube at Rev Bussman. Simply type in Rev Bussman to the search, and you'll find me. I do I do a brief run through one of the texts in the lectionary for the upcoming Sunday, and I've also been reacting to various things like the Passion of the Christ and this new TV series called The Chosen. So we do a little bit of that there. Our school website is stpaulscullman.com. But anything that you find, any of these places that you go, there's a link to the other. So the church website's the main place to go to find all of that, stpaulsl.com.
Fantastic. Pastor Bussman, thank you for your time today. What are your parting thoughts for our listeners?
I hope that this is a resource that people will use, especially when they travel to different places, so that they can hear about different communities. But more than that, we've had a couple of visitors come to us over the last several months from different states because they may have seen the church or heard of the church, and I really hope that this is a resource that people will use, even for the fact of potentially uprooting their lives for the sake of faithfulness. That people will hear of these communities and hear of these churches and want to go and to see and to hear the word. We have a fantastic congregation here. Of course, it's not a congregation without problems. Every one of them does, because every one of them is full of sinners. But anybody who is listening and who is passing through to go to the mountains, to go to the beach, to go to Tuscaloosa to see the national champions play football, or to come to the Space and Rocket Center in Huntsville, the NASA Museum, that they would swing by and introduce themselves, and that we could build relationships as brothers and sisters in Christ. So thank you for what you're doing. This is fantastic.
Absolutely. Thank you again. God's peace.
Yeah, peace to you.
Thanks for listening to the Lutheran Cartographer. For more about the things that we talked about today, check out the show notes page. That's at lutherancartographer.com/71. I encourage you to check out that Audible offer. That's at lutherancartographer.com/audible to get your free audiobook of your choice with a trial of their service. And until next time, I'm Nicholas Weber. Thanks for listening. I'll talk to you soon.